Every year, the Ballon d'Or is supposed to crown the best footballer on the planet. But let's be honest, it hasn't always gone to the right guy. Some of the greatest seasons in history were completely ignored, while others walked away with the trophy because of reputation or politics. Players who should have won were passed over, and football fans have been left asking, how did this happen? So today, we're going back to the last 30 years and looking at 11 players who should have walked away with the Golden Ball. So back in 1996, Ronaldo Nazario was only 20 years old, but he was already playing like the best in the world. At Barcelona, he scored 47 goals in 49 games, numbers almost unthinkable for a 20-year-old. He'd burst past defenders with raw acceleration, mix in a trademark step-over, and finish like it was the easiest thing in the world. That year, it didn't just feel like he was the best young player around. He looked like the best player in football, and most expected the Ballon d'Or to be his. But when the results came out, Ronaldo finished second. He lost by just 1 point, and the winner was Matthias Sammer. Now, Sammer was a top player, no doubt. With Dortmund, he helped win the Bundesliga. With Germany, he played every single minute of Euro 96, scored twice, and was even named player of the tournament as Germany lifted the trophy. On paper, it made sense. But for fans watching Ronaldo tear teams apart week after week, it felt like a betrayal. Still, let's be real. Most fans weren't convinced. Sammer was great, but Ronaldo was doing things no one else on the planet could do. The only thing missing for him that year was silverware, and because of that, the Ballon d'Or slipped away. R9 eventually got his Ballon d'Or, so at least his story had a happy ending, but the same can't be said for Thierry Henry. Now, Henry's case in 2003? That one still stings. He didn't just have a good season, he completely redefined what excellence in the Premier League looked like. 24 goals, 25 assists. That's not a typo. He's still the only player in English football history to hit more than 20 in both categories in the same season. Arsenal may have just missed out on the league to United, but they still picked up the FA Cup. And for Henry, the individual awards came flying in. PFA Players Player of the Year, FWA Footballer of the Year. He cleaned up in England. Add to that 7 goals in the Champions League and you're talking about a forward who was simply untouchable. But when it came time for the Ballon d'Or, it went to Pavel Nedved. Now, don't get me wrong, Nedved was fantastic that year. He led Juventus to the Serie A title and dragged them all the way to the Champions League final before losing to Milan on penalties. He was crucial, no doubt. Still, let's be honest, Nedved's year was great, but Henry's was on another level. His influence, his brilliance, the sheer numbers he put up. It feels crazy that he walked away empty-handed. If anyone deserved a golden ball on the mantelpiece, it was Thierry Henry in 2003. But the very next year, things got even more questionable. In 2004, the Ballon d'Or went to Andriy Shevchenko. Now, Sheva was brilliant. Nobody can deny that. He smashed 24 goals in 32 Serie A games, finished as the league's top scorer, and fired AC Milan to the Scudetto. Add the Supercoppa Italiana on top, and it looked like a striker's dream season. For the voters, that was enough to hand him the golden ball. But here's the problem. When you looked around at what other players were doing that same year, Shevchenko's win didn't feel quite right. Ronaldinho had just lit up Barcelona in his debut season, playing with a smile, pulling off outrageous skills, and ending the campaign with 28 goal contributions. Thierry Henry, meanwhile, once again was leading Arsenal's legendary Invincibles side, hitting 46 goals in all competitions and winning the European Golden Boot. Either one of those two had a case to be on that stage collecting the award. And then there was Deco. Out of everyone, he had the strongest claim. Under Jose Mourinho at Porto, Deco was the magician pulling the strings. He wasn't just racking up goals and assists, though he managed 9 goals and 25 assists. He was the creative heartbeat of a team that shocked the world. Porto didn't just win the Portuguese league, they went all the way in Europe, lifting the Champions League trophy. In the final against Monaco, Deco scored, ran the game, and walked away with the Man of the Match award. UEFA even named him Club Footballer of the Year. That's how good he was. So while Shevchenko's season was excellent, it felt like the voters fell back on the safe option, a big-name striker at a giant club with plenty of goals and a league title. But when you measure pure influence, impact, and individual brilliance, Deco should have been right at the front of the queue. He made history with Porto, earned a blockbuster move to Barcelona, and still didn't get the Ballon d'Or. To this day, a lot of fans see 2004 as one of the biggest robberies in the awards history. But fast forward a few years and the Ballon d'Or delivered one of its most infamous decisions ever, Wesley Sneijder in 2010. That year, Lionel Messi picked up his second Ballon d'Or. On paper, his numbers were insane. 47 goals, 12 assists, La Liga title, FIFA Club World Cup. Classic Messi stuff. But here's the thing. When you looked at what Sneijder did that year, it's almost unbelievable he didn't win. Sneijder had only joined Inter Milan a year earlier and he completely transformed them. In the Champions League semi-final against Barcelona, he scored one, assisted another, and helped Mourinho's side knock out Messi's Barca in a tie that still gets talked about today. Then in the final, he set up Diego Milito's opener against Bayern Munich as Inter went on to complete a historic treble: Serie A, Coppa Italia, and Champions League. Sneijder wasn't just part of that team, he was the one pulling the strings, dictating games, and delivering when it mattered. And if that wasn't enough, his summer was just as good. At the World Cup, Sneijder dragged the Netherlands all the way to the final. He finished as joint top scorer, picked up 4 Man of the Match awards, and was at the center of everything the Dutch did. Yes, they fell short against Spain in extra time, but Sneijder's influence was undeniable. Yet, when the Ballon d'Or votes came in, not only did he miss out on winning, he didn't even make the podium. Messi took first, Iniesta came second, Xavi third. Sneijder finished fourth, despite winning the treble and starring in a World Cup final. Even Inter's president at the time, Massimo Moratti, called it unfair, saying Sneijder had done everything possible to win. And honestly, he was right. 2010 remains one of the clearest examples where the Ballon d'Or felt broken. Because if winning everything at club level and starring at a World Cup isn't enough, what more could Sneijder have done? Just ask Franck Ribery. In 2013, Bayern Munich were unstoppable under Jupp Heynckes. They didn't just win trophies, they steamrolled everyone in sight, becoming the first German club ever to win the treble. They finished 25 points clear of Klopp's Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga, beat them again in the DFB Pokal final, and then capped it all off by edging their rivals 2-1 in a tense all-German Champions League final at Wembley. It was Bayern's greatest ever season, and Franck Ribery was at the heart of it. With his speed, skill, and relentless creativity, Ribery racked up 34 goal contributions across all competitions. In the biggest games, he was the spark that made Bayern tick. Müller, Lahm, Schweinsteiger, they were all immense, but Ribery was the driving force, the one defenders couldn't contain. By the end of the year, he had every trophy possible in his hands and a Champions League medal to go with it. But when the Ballon d'Or votes came in, Ribery wasn't the winner. He wasn't even second. Cristiano Ronaldo took the prize after scoring 55 goals, despite Real Madrid not winning a single major trophy. Messi came second, even though Bayern's 7-0 demolition of Barcelona in the Champions League semi-final had underlined just how far ahead Ribery's team really were. Years later, Ribery admitted how much it stung. It was unfair. They extended the time for votes, and something strange happened. I felt it was a political choice, and the irony, a few years later Ronaldo himself said, "To win the Ballon d'Or, you have to win the Champions League." Ribery saw that, shared it on his socials, and laughed, because that's exactly what he had done in 2013, only to be overlooked. When you put it all together, Ribery had everything. The trophies, the stats, the impact. But just like Sneijder, he was left empty-handed, another victim of the Messi-Ronaldo era. But here's the funny thing. Even Cristiano himself wasn't immune to the so-called Ballon d'Or curse. In 2018, football finally saw the end of Messi and Ronaldo's 10-year dominance of the award. Luka Modric swooped in, becoming the first man outside of the big two to lift the trophy in over a decade. And yes, Modric had an incredible year. He bossed the midfield as Real Madrid won their 13th Champions League, and he dragged Croatia all the way to a World Cup final. But let's be real, his numbers, 3 goals and 11 assists. For a Ballon d'Or winner, that's light. Meanwhile, Ronaldo was still doing what Ronaldo does, 44 goals in 44 games, 15 of them in the Champions League alone. He was tearing through defenses, delivering in the biggest games, and yet somehow the golden ball went to his teammate instead. Cristiano never openly complained, but you didn't need him to. His sister went nuclear on Instagram, calling the decision rotten with mafia and money, before adding that God would eventually set things right. It was one of the rare times Ronaldo got a taste of his own medicine. But strikers and playmakers weren't the only victims. Even defenders, the guys who rarely get any Ballon d'Or love, had their turn at being robbed, and nobody felt that more than Virgil van Dijk in 2019. Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool had just gone up a gear. Van Dijk arrived for £75 million and instantly transformed the defence into a wall of steel. Liverpool racked up 97 points in the Premier League, losing just once all season, and while they agonisingly finished second behind Pep Guardiola's relentless Manchester City, they did win the Champions League, beating Spurs in an all-English final. Van Dijk didn't just defend, he dominated. He played every single Premier League and Champions League game that season, 50 matches in total, and still chipped in with 10 goal contributions. Not a single player dribbled past him for months. For a centre-back, it was a near-perfect campaign, and many thought he'd become only the fourth defender in history to win the Ballon d'Or. But when the votes were counted, Lionel Messi edged him out by just 7 points. Messi's 51 goals and 22 assists that year were jaw-dropping, sure, but Liverpool had knocked Barca out of Europe in one of the most legendary comebacks the game has ever seen. Even Klopp couldn't hide his disappointment, saying, "I cannot remember a more impressive season for a defender ever." Van Dijk walked away empty-handed, and once again the Ballon d'Or reminded everyone that unless you're a goal scorer, you're fighting an uphill battle. But if you thought that was harsh, what happened next was just cruel. Enter Robert Lewandowski in 2020. Bayern Munich were unstoppable under Hansi Flick. They didn't just win, they destroyed everything in their path, storming to a Bundesliga, DFB Pokal, and Champions League treble. And at the heart of it was Lewandowski, scoring goals like a machine. 55 goals in a single season, finishing top scorer in every competition he played in. It was the kind of year where you don't just expect the Ballon d'Or, you basically engrave the trophy before the ceremony even starts. But then, nothing. Literally nothing. The 2020 Ballon d'Or was cancelled because of COVID. France Football claimed it wouldn't be fair since not every league finished its season, which, on paper, sounds noble. But let's be honest, everyone knew who the winner should have been. Lever was robbed by a decision made in an office, not on the pitch. Still, he came back firing in 2021, bagging 62 goals across all competitions. At that point, it felt like destiny had just been delayed. Surely, finally, the Ballon d'Or would be his. He racked up 580 voting points, an insane total, but somehow it still wasn't enough. Lionel Messi edged him out by 33 votes, and even in his winning speech, Messi admitted it. "Everyone knows, and we agree, that you were the winner last year. France Football should give you your 2020 Ballon d'Or. You deserve it." Instead, Lever was handed a consolation prize, the brand new Gerd Müller Striker of the Year award. A nice gesture, but let's be real, it was a slap in the face. 2 golden years, 2 golden chances, and not a single Ballon d'Or to show for it. But you'd think the Ballon d'Or would have learned its lesson by now, right? Nope. Because a few years later, another goal-scoring machine got the same treatment, Erling Haaland. Now don't get me wrong, Messi winning his 8th Ballon d'Or was the perfect storybook ending. He finally delivered Argentina the World Cup, 10 goal contributions in 7 matches, lifting the trophy that had haunted him his whole career. Add 20 goals and 21 assists for PSG, and yeah, it's a fairy tale. But if we're talking pure footballing dominance over a season, nobody on planet Earth came close to Haaland. The guy was a machine in 2022 to 2023, 52 goals in 53 games, a treble with Manchester City, records shattered almost every week. He wasn't just scoring tap-ins, he was bulldozing world-class defenders with pace and power, then finishing with ice-cold composure. And for Pep Guardiola, Haaland was the missing piece, the man who finally dragged City to Champions League glory. City didn't just win, they won because of Haaland. Some games, he was the difference all by himself. That's why legends like Lothar Matthäus called the vote a farce, and ex-PSG player Jerome Rothen even said Messi wasn't the best player at his club that season. Harsh words, but it shows how divided the football world was. Sure, Messi completed football in Qatar, but let's be real, he didn't need an 8th Ballon d'Or. Meanwhile, Haaland may never have another season this outrageous. And just when you thought the award couldn't shock us again, it did, with Vinicius Jr. Now, Rodri had a strong case, no doubt about it. He was the heartbeat of Manchester City as they lifted another Premier League title. And then he went and pulled the strings for Spain at Euro 2024, winning player of the tournament as they lifted the trophy. He only lost once all year across club and country. That's insane consistency. But let's be honest, the season belonged to Vinny. This was the year he officially became the most devastating attacker in world football. He wasn't just scoring, he was deciding the biggest matches. He bagged a hat-trick in the Spanish Super Cup final against Barcelona, fired in goals and assists as Madrid powered to another La Liga title, and then carried that form straight into the Champions League knockouts. By the time he scored in the final against Dortmund, it felt like the Ballon d'Or was his already. Yes, his Copa America with Brazil was disappointing, but that wasn't enough to overshadow what he did in Europe. The real issue. Vinicius and Jude Bellingham probably split the votes, leaving the door wide open for Rodri to sneak through. And to show how bitter it was, the whole Madrid camp, Vinny, Jude, the lot, boycotted the ceremony in Paris. That's how much it stung. And fans are left wondering, if Vinicius couldn't win it in 2024, when on earth will he? But 2025 was the final nail in the coffin for the Ballon d'Or's credibility. Dembélé finally put it all together at PSG, delivering 37 goals, 16 assists, and most importantly, the Champions League that has haunted the club for so long. Fair play, nobody can begrudge him lifting the golden ball, but here's where it gets messy. Raphinha, with 39 goals, 25 assists, and a domestic treble with Barcelona, somehow finished fifth. Fifth! How does a player put up numbers like that? Drag his team through La Liga, the Copa del Rey, and the Super Copa, and not even end up on the podium. Those stats blow Dembélé's out of the water, and they completely dwarf what Lamine Yamal produced. And yet, Yamal finished second. Now, don't get me wrong, the kid is a generational talent. At 18, he's already putting defenders on posters, and his Champions League displays against Inter were electric. But 21 goals and 26 assists, as brilliant as they are, aren't even in the same league as Raphinha's haul. Yamal was dazzling, yes, but Raphinha was decisive. Week in, week out, he was the difference maker for Barca. So let's call it what it is. Dembélé winning is fine, but Raphinha finishing behind Yamal and all the way down in fifth is nothing short of a robbery. The voters didn't reward the guy who carried Barcelona's attack with historic numbers. They got caught up in the fairy tale of a teenage prodigy, and in doing so, they handed us one of the most baffling Ballon d'Or rankings in history. Do you think Dembélé really deserved it? Or should it have been Raphinha? Maybe even Yamal? Drop your take in the comments. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next debate.